I'm very, very sorry. Uh, I'm very sorry the wind started again, and that's what is causing the issue. That's what caused the issue of the itch. Please, can we hear me?
Yes.
Thank you
Yes,
very much.
very well. We can hear you.
Thank you very much. I'm really, really sorry. So I was talking about rewards, that this is another way we can constructively escalate a conflict, and it works better than sanctions. We talked about coercion, but reward are positive sanctions, whereas coercion, they are negative sanctions. And studies have shown that rewards are more effective than punishments in interpersonal conflict. So, as conflict managers, we may want to encourage our the parties to conflict that is brought to us to defer more to positive sanctions, that is to rewards, than to coercion, which is negative sanction. And like I said about coercion, most of us we have encouraged parties to use this in our experiences. We just never knew that this is what it is called, and this is a technical way of using it. So when we use reward, we can offer a reward for compliance. What we want the other party, the other conflict party to comply with. We say every time you do this, you get this. Wife may tell the husband, the other may tell the wife. Instead of forcing you to maybe show submission or whatever, anytime you submit, you have this. It will not be monetary. It will not be monetary reward. Or there are many other ways people can be rewarded apart from financially. Okay, the third strategy is persuasion. When we use persuasion, these are persuasive inducements to influence an opponent by reasoning with them, by communicating our arguments or information, or we appeal to them in order to alter their perception of the conflict. To alter their perception of the conflict. For instance, in a conflict between a staff, an employer, and the employee may come to say, to show how not being paid salary or being paid some money, how it has affected his family. Maybe one of his children is even a favorite of the employer. Say, I couldn't pay the school fees or pay for health, whatever of this your daughter or this your son that has affected me this week. Please, sir, can you help me with my promotion or with the payment of this, blah, blah. When we use persuasion, the assumption is that there is a reasonable man in the other party that we can appeal to through logic, and that once we're able to do that, we're able to see our goal, and then voluntarily the other party will be able to accept the goal. These are tactics and strategies that will help us determine which kind of strategy, which kind of method, whether persuasion, coercion, or reward, or a combination of them to use. These four factors will determine our escalation tactics and strategies. One, the goal of the disputants. The goal of the disputants. The parties to the conflict, what goals do you want to achieve with the conflict? If somebody has decided that I want to opt out of this relationship, business or spousal relationship, and that's the ultimate. He has made up his mind. The way we are going to handle such a case will be different from somebody that is still interested in the continuity of the relationship. We want to look at the internal characteristics of the conflict of the parties. A conflict where the disputants are very educated, the husband graduate, wife graduate. It will be different from a one whereby the husband, the wife is a graduate, and the husband didn't finish secondary school. The relations between the parties and their social environment. How we're going to counsel a couple in Nigeria within the social cultural environment of Nigeria will be different when we take them to the United Kingdom or to the United States. In Nigeria, you can still use culture, the male thing to scare people, to scare wives. But when we get to the context of the United States or the UK, where women have very much, the rights, they are like this, plenty. How we're going to handle it, same couple will be different. Why? Because the social environment is different. So, as conflict managers, we need to be aware of these 4 tactics, these 4 factors in determining which do we recommend to parties as their strategy or their tactics for escalation. Each of these is explained in subsequent slides. Okay, escalation, if not properly handled, may lead to a stalemate. That is the first stage. A stalemate is a situation in which neither side can win. If the pain of continuing the conflict exceeds that of maintaining the confrontation, the parties will now be in what Zatman calls Hutton stalemate. Hutton stalemate is an agonizing stage of stalemate. Stalemate is a stage where nobody can win. That reminds me of a situation I found myself very many years ago. Very many years ago, I should still be in secondary school, maybe DSS. I'm not sure whether I've been in SS class. Now, we were living in the quarters. I was in Bishop Phillips Academy then, and my mom was a teacher. So we live in the quarters, and we have this big football field. And because the fence of the school has broken down, people come from we call it Agbole people. They just come and they use the field, we play. So these Agbole children were friends, but there was this one very tall and lanky. When somebody is lanky, it means he's so thin, almost frail looking. So, but tall, intimidatingly tall, almost double my height, literally. It was like the champion of this set of Agbole children that came that day. And we were playing. Now I wanted to use his big, his tall stuff to chance us. And I was like the leader of the quarters circle, and also there are some people that are very close to the quarters. They are Agbole, but they are more refined than the Poko Agbole people. So I was their leader, being the oldest. I wasn't tall, but they respect me. So when this confrontation started, I was even the one that confronted him because I don't like injustice. You can't do this. You can't just do this. This guy decided to fight me. It was ridiculous because ordinarily you should know that you will beat me. Everybody know that. You shouldn't even challenge. You shouldn't have challenged me because that's not a fair fight. But this guy, anyway, did, and I had to, defend my own pride too, my own ego. So I stood up to him, and funnily, this guy was not as strong as his physique looked. So I punches this one. Unfortunately for us, It was during the peak of Harmattan period when you'll be so tired, the weather is so dry, it's so windy, you know those whistling winds. So me and this guy were throwing punch at ourselves on the field, and our comrades, they surrounded us, they were enjoying free film. There was no DSTV, wasn't popular then. So free film, that goes, yeah. Very soon we got tired. I was using eyes to call my people to come and separate us. Because when we throw one punch, we will fall. The opponent will fall. It will take like a minute before the two of you will struggle to stand up again and use backhand to slap the other person's tummy. If I come, and people will laugh, and the two of you will fall. These evil comrades of ours, they refuse to separate us until the two of us, we have to agree that this time, this fight is enough. That is a stalemate. In fact, we moved from a stalemate to a stalemate because it was clear that none of us can win. We were too tired to win, and we were too ashamed to withdraw. That is utter stalemate. We moved from stalemate to utter stalemate. Sometimes people on both sides of conflict, they get tired of fighting, they get tired of killing. If that is the stage we are called in as managers, it is a good time. Sometimes they get tired because they have run out of ammunition. Maybe the communal conflict, armed conflict. At that stage, the next stage is de-escalation. However, we should know that conflict that has gone from escalation to stalemate can go back to escalation. So the image is not a smooth thing. There can be spikes. Utter statements, instead of going to escalate the escalation, it can escalate. Somebody will supply the ammunition. Somebody may just pick interest again, and then the fight continues. But it's a good opportunity for conflict managers to intervene and drive it towards escalation. At escalation, it involves changes in the attitude and behaviors of the adversaries, which will now lead to new forms of interaction between them. The escalation usually occurs when the parties have reached a prolonged stalemate, like me and that other guy that we are fighting. A prolonged stalemate in which both sides are being harmed by continuing the confrontation. They are receiving more harm as they continue the confrontation. Parties are now more likely willing to negotiate. De-escalation usually proceeds slowly and with much effort. Sometimes some people will be dragging foot at de-escalation. But we as conflict managers, there are things we can do that we refer to as de-escalation strategies. De-escalation strategies. For us to de-escalate, both parties must cooperate. They must redefine their relationships. But there are certain things we refer to as de-escalation strategies. Some of the methods are grit, gradual reduction in tension. You can appeal to parties to gradually reduce their tension. They have been killing 10 people per day before. Oh, maybe you can stop the killing. But killing is now 5, or don't kill people again. Another strategy, and if it's not killing, maybe burning houses, it's okay. Let them first of all stop burning houses. De-escalation negotiations. Okay, stop burning houses. Okay, you go and tell them also we should stop burning our houses. So once they agree, which we agree, that's part of the escalation negotiation. Okay, let us stop using these means, this force. Okay, we will stop, you two will stop. The escalation. These are part of our jobs as conflict managers. Media management. Sometimes media reportage of some communal conflicts leads to their escalation. So we need to appeal to both sides mind what you tell the media. In fact, sometimes media is totally cut off when we are in conflict management processes. We want to cut off media from reporting anything negative. I want them to be reporting only positive. Oh, the leader of this group and that group, they embrace. Yes, it has a calming effect on the populace. Oh, the leader of this one and that one, they greeted and they met, they do this. These are the ways we manage the media such that the media will not undo the works we are doing by mismanagement of information. Fourth, we can use various efforts to strengthen relationships between the adversaries. Various methods. If it is between a husband and a wife, and say, okay, why don't you spend this weekend together and so with them? We have raised money for it. Maybe we raised money from friends or from let them lodge in a hotel that both of them cannot afford before, something like that. My grandfather, of blessed memory, was a Arawasu in our town. It wasn't learned, but he said the way he used to interpret the Holy Quran, to interpret the preaching, the wasi of the scholars. In fact, the Islamic people say, Baba, in fact, you do better than those of us that even read the Holy Quran. So, he's my grandfather has a reputation of knowing how to mediate conflict. He said from all over the village or town, then Kuta, people will bring conflict to him. They say, I want to get to Babarawa. Just be sure. By the time the two of you or all the conflict parties they bring you to his presence, he will leave his presence laughing. Because apart from talking to you, using God's words, he will use experience. At the end of the day, he may force you to do some things together. One of the things he used to do for his kids that we learned of is that he will now send the two of you to go and fetch water. Those of you that are fighting. By the time you get to the stream, you know you have to help yourself to carry the bucket or the pot, the water pot. And because of the distance of the stream, you'll be forced to be talking. You can start with begrudging one another, but by the time you go, before you get there, by the time you are coming back, you'll be forced to start talking. This is part of effort to strengthen relationships between adversaries. You can use that tactic in communal conflict. The UN agency, I think UNDP has used it before, in rebuilding the bridge that connected two communities in conflict. The bridge was blown during the conflict. So in rebuilding it, instead of giving it to external contractor, instead of giving the rebuilding of the bridge to external contractor, UNDP employed people from the two communities to help rebuild the bridge. And the process of working together began to break the ice between them. And before you know what was happening, our friendship was being forged and reforged, and bonds were being renewed and strengthened. Successful de-escalation paves the way for negotiation and a potential settlement. Finally, if and when an agreement is reached, peace-building efforts work to repair damaged relationships with the long-term goal of reconciling former opponents. Now want permanent reconciliation. We have to build schools for them, train them in conflict management, and so on and so forth. So there's no conflict that just blow out. There's nothing called outburst of conflict, violence or harmed conflict. Like most natural things, conflict grows from harmless stage to a potentially and actually harmful one till it becomes an all-consuming phenomenon. However, at each stage of its evolution, there are strategies and tactics that conflict managers can use to transform its destructive potentials and maximize its constructive energy. That responsibility is ours as conflict managers. Conflict has positive constructive energies that we can tap into, that we can maximize, and they have destructive potential that we must minimize as conflict manager. We won't waste time on this. Our time is almost done. We have looked at types of conflict in the morning under key terms, where we categorize conflicts using 4 parameters, and this is exactly what we looked at. Manifestations of conflict. Okay. One of the types of conflict, one of the categorization of conflicts is what we refer to as level, the space within which the conflict is happening. And we said in the morning we have intrapersonal conflict, conflict within a person, conflict of decision making, to tell or not to tell, what choice do I make, intrapersonal. Interpersonal conflict is conflict between 2 or more individuals, and the issue are over personal interest, personal values, personal needs. Now, intra-group conflict occurs within a group over group interests, values, and needs, and then for which group members mobilize in factions. Example is internal party crisis. The conflict may be over who becomes the next leader. Oh, what policy do we adopt? How do we share these resources? And then party members will mobilize, they begin to build themselves, and so on and so forth. Interpersonal conflict is not the same as intra-group conflict. The difference is that interpersonal conflict, even among group members, interpersonal conflict is conflict over personal interest, personal needs. But intra-group conflict has to do with issues, interests, needs, and values of group. Interstate or international conflicts are conflicts between 2 or more states, that is countries, like the one we are witnessing now, Ukraine-Russia conflict. When we classify conflicts in terms of the major driver, that's when we have ethnic conflict, religious conflict. An example of religious conflict is sectarian conflict, conflict between sects of a particular religion. We have political, ethno-religious, communal conflict, environmental conflict, resource-based, indigenous settler, identity-based conflict, herders-farmers conflict. Is an example of identity, or is an example of resource-based conflict. So this brings us to the end of our day today. I want to thank those of us that still made our time to be able to partake of, to be able to participate rather in this afternoon session. So I don't know whether we have questions or comments on the class so far. Any comments or questions? I could see that there have been submissions in our chat. Mr. Rio Olayinka is saying, please assist us with the recorded version. Just hanging around, giving fluctuations in network. Yes, the network has been very, very challenging, has been very, very challenging